Hi, welcome back to McClutchy Maths. My name is Natalie McClutchy and today we are starting a new series on the channel. It's the 2025 update to Queensland's problem solving and modelling task marking scheme. So I'm going to take you through video by video all the different elements of the new marking scheme. Now, if you're not in Queensland, you're somewhere else in the world, possibly even at university, you'll still find some useful tips and tricks right through this video series on how to write an assignment or a report about mathematics. So don't just discount us because this is specific to the Queensland marking scheme. A lot of the things you're going to hear are going to be useful no matter where you are or what you're doing. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about how you can engage with us here at McClutchy Maths. Firstly, you can consider liking and subscribing to the channel and hit that notification bell so you'll know when the next video is ready to watch. You can also follow us on your social media channels. We're on Facebook and Instagram. That's a great place to engage with some more fun tips and tricks and also other information. You could also consider super like. Just look for that at the top of your screen. It's got a little dot there. It's a way to say thank you to us for all the work we're putting in here at the channel. It only costs you $2 to donate. And lastly, if you found something helpful in this video, you want to tell others about it, why not tell us in the comments? Later in the video, I'll give you some more information about how you can get in touch with us, but let's get started firstly on what we're going to be covering in this video. So firstly, I'm going to do a very brief rundown on why there's a new video series, because we've had a very successful video series on how to write a PSMT, and I'll tell you why we're updating it. Secondly, I'm going to go through what is this acronym, an ISMG, so stay tuned for that part. And then I'm going to tell you in this particular video where to get started when your teacher's handed out a new assignment and how to be successful in your task. Well, firstly, why is there a new video series? Well, in 2019, Queensland completely changed up the syllabus for mathematics. They had been running with an old system of OP, and the OP system was outdated and ATAR was brought in. Now, that's worked really well for the last 6 years, but in 2025, the Queensland syllabus for maths is going to be completely updated with a new instrument-specific marking guide. That is what ISMG stands for. It's the criteria which you're going to be marked against. Now, this is going to affect all students in Queensland who start grade 11 from 2025 and graduate from year 12 from 2026. Some schools may choose to start using this ISMG with junior year levels. I know at my school we've already trialled it with our grade 10s. So if you're going to be in year 11 or year 12, anytime after 2025, there's a very good chance even from year 7 you might start engaging with this ISMG. It's also anticipated that this series will be really helpful for teachers and students. So if you're a teacher, why not consider adding this to your class OneNote and share the links with your students? And if you're a student, really consider sharing this with your friends in your class. Okay, let's talk about the ISMG. We've already mentioned that stands for Instrument Specific Marking Guide. It's a very fancy name for the marking scheme that you're going to be marked against. So teachers look at this marking scheme and they look for evidence in your report somewhere in order to award you with a grade out of 20. Now, to achieve the very top standard, 20 out of 20, you have to meet every criteria in all of the requirements in the top box in all of the 4 sections. And there's 4 sections of a problem-solving modelling task. There's formulate, solve, evaluate, and communicate. Now, our formulate, solve, and evaluate sections are distinct parts of your assignment. It's not a great idea to use the subheadings formulate and then to do stuff under formulate and then solve. There are better headings you can use to describe the work that you're going to be doing there, and I will explain what those headings are. But there's nothing wrong with using formulate, solve, or evaluate either. Communicate, however, is a mark that's given to the whole assignment as a whole. Now, the formulate part of your assignment is worth 4 marks out of 20. Solve is worth 7 marks out of 20. Evaluate is worth 5 marks out of 20. And communicate is the remaining 4 marks. So the teacher looks at the overall report against different criteria and then awards these marks. So evidence can be looked for in any of the sections. Now, as I've just mentioned, teachers do look beyond formulate. So if there's things that are specific to formulate, such as observations and assumptions, they typically would find those in the formulate section. However, we do look for evidence throughout your report because you may have made an observation in your solve section or even in your evaluation. It is a good idea, however, to have these marked very clearly in the appropriate part of the assignment. It makes it much easier for your teacher to give that evidence and award the marks to you. So we're going to start this video series with one element of communicate, as this is the most logical place to start about where to talk about how to get started on your task. So I'm going to show you this part of the ISMG for communicate. It is very different to what it was under the 2019 syllabus. So in this now, to get in the top marks, you need to have correct use of appropriate mathematical language. Notice last time it was all about being coherent and concise, and that's gone away now. We're looking for logical organisation of your response, which can be read independently of the task sheet, and that your decisions throughout your report are justified using mathematical reasoning. So this is quite different to what we've experienced in the past. And this is our focus for this video today. I know it seems strange to start at communicate and not formulate, but one of the common things students want to know when they're getting started is, how do I do that? What do I do first? How do I get going? Because it is quite overwhelming when you receive a new task for the first time. So we're looking today at how to set that up in a logical way and how to make sure it's read independently of the task sheet. So here's some places and some tips on how you can get started. Firstly, your teacher might be really kind. They might actually provide you with a Word document template with all the subheadings set up in there so that you can just simply populate under those subheadings. I know for some of my junior subjects of maths, I often provide that, and under each of those subheadings I have some scaffolding or some explanation as to what to write in each section. If your teacher does give explanation under each subheading, make sure you delete that before you hand your assignment in. I often find students leaving the instructions in there. Not only does that affect their word count and their page count, but it also does affect that whole thing here about the logical organisation. It's not logically organised if all the teacher's instructions are still included. It's also going to affect your plagiarism check as well, because chances are if somebody else has left those instructions in, it's going to be a perfect match to their assignment. Now, you could also consider going onto the QCAA's website. If you just type into your browser QCAA 2025 syllabus, under that link there, you'll find some exemplars as guides to how to set out a PSMT. And they've got those for maths methods, for general maths, and for specialist and essential maths as well. So there's different reports in there. You can use those as a template or a guide for your setup. And if you look through your task sheet, most schools will include a flowchart of the problem solving and modelling process. That flowchart could give you some hints as to what kind of subheadings might need to be in your report. Now, if you're given none of these guides, what the very first thing you're going to do is open a fresh document in Word. And I'm going to give you some ideas now about what a typical layout will include. So firstly, you might want to consider having a title page. Now, don't spend too much time on this. It's not marked. It's actually not even included in your page count. But some really important information that should be on that cover sheet will be your name, your teacher's name, a suitable title for the task, and ideally the year and the task type. So you can see down here, I've got this report's prepared by sample student. I've got the teacher's name here, and this is the first senior assessment, IA1, and it's for the year 2025. And a little title here, and the students put in a picture as well. Once again, as I mentioned, it's not included in your page count, so don't panic about having a whole page filled up with this kind of information. It's not going to be held against you, and it's not marked. The next part of your assignment to be logically organised would be a contents page. Now, you might want to take a little photograph right now of this screen. This is an example of some of the parts of the report that might be useful as you set this out. This is actually a student's piece of work. So that's another example of how you might decide to set up your assignment. Once again, this is not marked, and it's also not included in your page count. One thing that is kind of cool about Word is if you set up in Word a table of contents, and there's lots of videos out there on how to do that, so I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, but if you can set up a table of contents page and then use inserting of titles throughout your report, these are the titles that you would be inserting, then you can automatically update that contents page so you don't have to keep changing the numbers as you go. It'll do it for you. Okay, Another important thing to include is page numbers. Now, one of the reasons for including some page numbers is that there are limits to how many pages you can have in your assignment. So this helps keep you accountable as you're going. You know where you're up to and how many pages you've got left. It also makes it very easy for the person marking your assignment to see that you have been under the page count or right on the page count, and then you will not be penalised. You can also put your page numbers in a header or a footer in Word, and they'll automatically update. So if you insert a header or insert a footer and then put in the code for a page number, then you'll have those and they'll automatically update as your assignment's being created. I'm not going to show you a demonstration of how to do that right now. There's lots of videos on YouTube that can show you how to insert page numbers. Okay. Now, some key headings you might want to consider in Formulate. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, and it's not the be-all and end-all list. This is just a list I've come up with. You may not wish to use all of these subheadings, but typically what you might see under Formulate is a short introduction, about a paragraph long, a heading of definition of variables and key terms. This is a good place to go through and identify what you're going to be graphing on the x-axis, what you're going to be graphing on the y-axis, also to pick up any key vocabulary and make definitions. Here's a good place to put your procedure, a step-by-step guide to how you're going to complete your task. Maybe a heading for considerations, especially if you're doing some sampling of your own or you've taken your own measurements, a heading of use of technology, and a heading of observations and assumptions. So that is a bit of an idea of the kind of things we're expecting to see in your report. How you choose to create subheadings for those is up to you, but this is a little guide here that might be helpful. I'm actually going to go into the upcoming videos, all of these different parts that you see on here, how to write around those. So not in this video. This video is just how to get started. But then upcoming videos are going to explain in a lot more detail. So for Solve, these headings that you're going to include in Solve are really going to depend on the type of assignment you're doing, whether it's for specialist or general or for a junior maths one. What I would say is that your Solve section should have multiple parts to it, depending on all of the things that you need to do to solve the problem. So for each of those elements, you should have separate subheadings to keep your work organized clearly. Now, what I mean for that, let's say you're doing a graph by hand, and then you have to draw the same graph again using technology. What I would do is have a subheading, graph drawn by hand, and then have your graph underneath. The next subheading will be graph drawn with technology. Then the next subheading under that might be the discussion about what you've graphed. And so as you continue to solve the problem, each new stage of that solving will have separate subheadings. It's a good idea at the very beginning of your assignment to be forward thinking and think about what kind of things you have to do to solve the problem. And as you've set your procedure up, some of those things will become really clear to you. And that will help you to write some subheadings before you get started. And that way, as you're writing the assignment, you're just filling in the areas underneath your subheadings. Now, for evaluation, there are some very important key things that must be included in there. There needs to be an evaluation of the reasonableness of your observations and an evaluation of the reasonableness of your assumptions. These should be separate subheadings. A separate subheading for strengths and limitations, and also a subheading for recommendations of improvement of the results or the models, and finally your conclusion paragraph. We'll go into a lot more detail on those in our future video series. After you've done your conclusion, your next step should be to have a heading of a reference list. Any quotes that you've included in your assignment should be in this reference list. And this is not included in your page or word count. But it's very important that if you've sourced something or quoted something from a textbook or an online source, or even used an online calculator or something like that, and you've taken screenshots of something and put it in your assignment or quoted something word for word, it must be included in your reference list. This can also be automatically created. So if you're setting up sources and doing citations as you go, you can have a bibliography or a reference list that automatically uses the sources you've created. Once again, this is a wonderful skill and technique that Word provides. Jump onto YouTube and have a look at some videos on how to do that. It is a lifesaver, especially if you are doing a report for university and you have lots and lots and lots of references that you need to include. Finally, there's the appendix, and this is probably the most misunderstood part of the assignment. It's not included in your page and word count, and it is not marked. So it's very important that you don't put key information in your appendix. Now you might be wondering, well, if I can't put anything in there that's important and it's not getting marked, why would I even have an appendix in the first place? Well, it includes things such as evidence of your sampling. So if you've had to go and, for example, go and find 30 cars on carsales.com.au, this would be the place where you'd take your snapshot of your cars so that you could prove the price of that car or the odometer reading of that car. If you had to take measurements of a range of people and collect the sample from that range of measurements, you could include all of the measurements you've taken in your appendix. Any repeated workings. So there are some things, for example, where you might have to take and calculate the mean of something 20 times. Now you wouldn't show 20 different parts of working in the body of your assignment. It would take up too much space. So you might show one sample example of how you've calculated the mean and then put the 19 other examples in your appendix. Now it's important, if you use the appendix for anything, that you reference this inside the body of your assignment to refer the reader of your assignment to go and look at the appendix for this extra information. Okay, let's talk about some ways that we can be really successful with this task. First of all, record your key dates. If you have a written diary, write them into a diary. If you use a digital calendar like I do, put the key dates into your digital calendar. Also, it's a really good idea to plan ahead. If you know you've got 4 weeks to complete the task, block out specific dates where you're going to work on it. Break that task up into small chunks. So you might say for every subheading, that's going to be a chunk. And then each day you might just do one small chunk and set those deadlines for completion. The other thing you could do is get somebody organised to keep you accountable to your deadlines. That could be a parent, a sibling, it could be a friend at school. So you may even decide to sit down with a friend and say, right, let's break this task up into all the subheadings. Okay, on this date we're going to have this complete, and on this date we're going to have that complete. And then you can check in with that friend and say, have you done your considerations yet today? That was due today. And then listen to their excuses when they say they haven't. And you've probably got some of the same excuses yourself. Okay, the other thing that I really, really recommend is to read and reread and reread that task sheet. Make sure you don't miss anything, because sometimes it might be just a few words that the teacher's slipped into the task, that there's something critical and key that they want you to include in the assignment. You don't want to miss any of those key parts, so highlight all of the key elements. And watch the rest of this video series. Now, most of these videos take about 10 minutes to watch. There's probably going to be a dozen of them. So you're looking at a few hours of viewing and probably pausing in between to take notes or screenshots. So I would recommend that you set aside the time to do that very early on, or even as you go to watch or as you go to do the observations section, then you watch the video first. So include that in your block out time at home to watch the video and then do the task. Some other things you might want to think about are, have a think about everything you learned this term. Now, typically an assignment's not handed out day one. It's usually handed out like week 4 or week 5 to give you time to learn all the content first and then dive in and show that you've learned the content. So have a think about everything your teacher talked to you about. Go back over any PowerPoints your teacher's created. Go through your OneNote and have a look and see on the OneNote what the teacher's put on there as resources. So all of that content that you've been taught is probably being expected to be demonstrated in your assignment. So you want to make sure that you're including all of that. Also, you get a few lessons to work on your assignment. Obviously, once you're in year 11 and 12, you only get 3 hours to work in class on your assignment. If you're in junior school, you'll probably get more lessons. I know some classes sometimes get up to 10 lessons working on the assignment. This is a really important time for you to use that class time productively. It's not a time to catch up with your friend. It's not a time to get distracted scrolling through your emails or playing games on your device. Not that you would ever do that. So use that 1 hour in class that you've got really productively. It'll save you doing it at home, and it's a great time to ask questions of your teacher as well. So do make yourself confident to ask your teacher for clarification of things you don't understand about the task. Also, if your school offers tutoring, free tutoring after school, what a wonderful idea. If your school offers that, why not get yourself down to maybe a tutoring session every week? And that's a great time to ask the teacher there for feedback or ideas about where you're going with your assignment. good idea also is to research your context. So for example, if your context is all about forensic anthropology and bones, well, that might be a good idea just to do a little deep dive. It doesn't have to be a massive one. You're not expected to be an expert in that field, but just a little bit of a deep dive into the context. What do forensic anthropologists do? How do they measure bones? Where do they measure them to and from? This could help you not only write your observations and assumptions, but it could also help you be a bit more knowledgeable about the results. When you receive the results, are they what you would be expecting if this was a real life context? Also talk to the adults in your life, parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, anyone else in your life. Ask them about this context. They might know stuff that you don't know. It might be a lot easier than trawling through the internet and getting distracted by reels and videos and things like that. So talk to some grown-ups and ask them, what do you know about forensic anthropology? You know, if a body's found on the ground, and what do you know about how they deal with the crime scene? Chances are those parents in your life and the adults in your life have a lot of life experience to pass on. We've already talked about the free tutoring. I got ahead of myself there, but it's definitely a great idea. It's a great place to focus yourself if you know you get distracted at home. Also to bounce ideas off other students that are there, and also ask maybe someone who's different to your regular teacher. They might explain things differently in a way that helps you understand even better. Well, that's all we have time for today. I hope you found this video helpful and it's given you the motivation to get started. If you've got any questions about anything you heard in today's video, the best place to contact us is mcclutchymaths@yahoo.com. I'm Natalie McClutchy. Thank you so much for watching this series. I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming videos. Have a wonderful day.